This is Bashing, doing another caster roundup interview. I have with me.
Hey there, I'm Krushinator. I'm a caster for the Nexus Gaming series, getting ready for my second season.
I want to say thank you for making the time for this interview, and I don't really appreciate it. I know this is our second go trying to have this happen, and I'm really excited for this.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
So let's start with what got you into casting. And I want to start with, I'm pretty sure you started casting in a different game.
No, this isn't my first go casting. I got into Heroes of the Storm a while ago. I played, it was after release, so I didn't get to play the beta. But for the longest time, listening to podcasts, just sort of playing casually. But around the beginning of season 9, it was actually Valcomer, who runs the CCS organization, was posting in one of my podcast discords, the Into the Nexus Discord, about an open free agent night, and it was around that time, still sort of mourning the loss of NGS, or not NGS, mourning the loss of HGC. But that was starting to pass, and I was thinking, might get into some amateur play, and that's sort of how I discovered the NGS.
So you started off with a podcast?
Yeah, so I mean, I listened to a lot of podcasts. That's sort of my main avenue into all the games that I play. So I listened to a lot of Warcraft podcasts, Heroes of the Storm, some Dungeons and Dragons stuff, a little bit of just all sorts of things. And that was sort of my main connection to Heroes of the Storm for a long time before I started playing more.
Is there any podcast that you listen to now for Heroes of the Storm?
Right now, it's mostly Into the Nexus. I do catch Nexus Edge occasionally, but back in the day, Lords of the Storm, Stormcast, the General Blizzard podcast, we're picking it up through 2016, 2017. I was listening to all of those, but Into the Nexus is the main one that I'm still listening to now.
Nice. I actually did not foresee you starting off or listening to the podcast, getting to the gaming. What made you want to do the casting? I mean, is there anything that you saw in a caster previously? Because you watched HGC, right?
Yeah, so I mean, I followed HGC pretty closely. It was the number one esport that I was watching. And then through that, I sort of started watching Trixler stream a lot more. And I've been watching him for, I think it's been over 4 years now. He was a big caster for the HGC. And over time, just sort of seeing what he did, watching Jayhow, watching Dreadnought, Gillyweed, all these folks casting, I always thought it was a cool endeavor, as a cool way to sort of be a part of the game. And that was always sort of in the back of my mind. So last season, when I joined up with an NGS team and I realized that there were casters for the league and it was all just sort of volunteers that tried to get into it, I thought that was a chance for me. Give it a shot.
Out of the HGC casters, which one was your favorite? Aside with Trixler, I'm going to assume, right?
Trixler was the one that I sort of held on to. He was a big streamer at the time as well. My favorite, gosh, that's hard. There's a lot of fan favorites though, but honestly, the one that I sort of hooked onto the most was Jayhow. I always enjoyed the way he would break it down like a more traditional sportscaster. He would approach things from a personal angle of the players, heavy on the analysis. I liked the timbre of his voice. And while he didn't get a ton of HGC screen time, I loved all the segments he was on and all of the sort of up and coming tournaments that he mostly covered at the time.
Do you watch his stream now?
I do catch his stream occasionally now. He's still playing a lot of Heroes, doing a lot of community work, still creating all those YouTube videos. So I usually go to him for hero guides.
Do you try to emulate any of the casters you've seen in your casts?
In terms of emulating styles, I try to take a look at what other casters are doing, but not straight copy their styles. But I think probably the person that I watched most closely when when I first started up, and I'm still sort of looking to now, is Bahamut Gaming, because like I'd seen the HGC casters, and they've got a particular style for working as a team, working in a professional environment. But Bahamut does so much solo casting and so much amateur casting. I felt like he was a really good role model for me starting out as a solo amateur caster.
So starting out solo, did you start out a solo or did you do a co-cast?
I've done a couple co-casts over time, but it's really been mostly solo work up until now. One of my personal goals for this coming season of the NGS is to start trying to work more in teams, finding some co-casters, working with different people, so I get a little more experience with duo casting.
So I want to talk about the co-casting, but I really need to ask first is how did your first cast go? And you remember the teams that you casted?
My first cast, I believe, was a Division D East matchup. I don't recall exactly who it was. You know, I can actually find out right here. I've got all my VODs. It was. Oh, it was actually a Division C West. It was currently chasing Samuro versus Better Than Bots. That was my first match back in May, and I feel like I had a little bit of a leg up for a first cast because I've been streaming for a while now, just sort of on and off, nothing too serious, but I've been working Twitch streams since, gosh, 2017, I think now. So I had a lot of the technical side down. So I was really more focusing on the casting and less on getting all the tech to work. So I feel like I had a little bit of a leg up there. But the first thing that I noticed when I got into casting is wow, you have to talk a lot, drink a whole lot of water, catch yourself, your mouth gets dry. And that's, that's still something I think about casting now.
So when you're casting, is water the only thing you have on you, or is there any particular drink that you have that you need?
Before a cast, if I feel like I'm particularly parched, I'll get some tea with honey. But during a cast, it's just water. I don't want anything like to. A couple times I've tried having coffee during a cast, and I feel like it makes my jaw lock up a little bit. It makes my throat stick. So anything to perk me up is always before the cast, and during is just water.
That's tips of the trade right there. Honey
Mhm.
tea with honey. That's nice.
Yeah.
So going to back to the co-caster thing, what are you looking for in a co-caster?
Right now, since I've been doing solo for the first NGS season that I joined, I feel like I've got a good sort of play-by-play caster style down. And I find I don't have a lot of time to really delve into talents, delve into player profiles, things like that. So I feel like if I wanted to get into duo casting, being able to either have someone else come in and do the play by play and have me focus a lot more on looking at builds, looking at play styles, really breaking down fights, or having a co-caster that can do that would bring an extra dimension to the casting that I do.
I guess the question really was is what do you like? Do you want them to have like a to build off of you, or do you want them simply to fill in the areas that you don't have?
I think if I were to work with the same person a lot over time, we could develop that sort of snappy back and forth where we could both be working a team fight or both be sort of riffing off of each other's questions. But I think at the beginning, it would probably help to have more divided responsibilities.
Yeah, that seems like the best course of action, especially if you haven't worked with them before. Have you ever thought trying to do it with someone that's on your team?
I did work with one of my teammates. That was the main duo cast that I've done so far. I did two with D, who I played with in the last NGS season, and I've done one with Artha now of the Nexus Cats. And so I haven't really worked with any one person for long enough to really develop a natural rhythm. But I'm hoping this season that I work with a couple co-casters, maybe find one that sort of fits my schedule, and we can do 3, 4, 5 series together and really start to develop a style as a unit.
Hopefully, whoever someone listens to this and says, I want to work with this guy.
That'd be great.
So, what do you do to get ready for a cast?
The first thing I usually do to get ready is I do some research on the teams. Stats of the Storm has been a fantastic tool for me alongside of Heroes Profile. At the beginning of the season, obviously, we don't have a whole lot of data on the teams as they stand. So I'll dig into Heroes Profile on the players a little bit, see like who the tank players usually is, healers, what roles they generally go for, what heroes they like to play, just so I have an idea of what to expect in the drafts. Later on in the season, I get a lot more data from them playing as a team, so I get to delve a little bit more into that. But I like going into a match. I want to know the team's records. I want to know their map preferences. I want to know their composition styles. So I have sort of a base of knowledge to work with as I head into the cast.
Is there a difference between a playoff game versus a regular season game for you to get ready to do that cast? Like, are you doing any smelling salts to get you really in the mood?
Definitely making sure that I'm in good physical shape before a big cast is something that I think about. Like I've been working a side tournament, the Zul'jin Distillery Invitational League in the NGS off season that's getting into the playoffs now. And I think I owe it to them to make sure that I'm in top shape, sort of heading into a big playoff cast. So part of that is, getting enough sleep the day before, maybe getting some exercise in, making sure that I've eaten the right stuff for the day so that I'm fully, awake, I'm present, I'm hydrated, and I'm ready to put as much passion as I can into a cast and really give them a show.
That's an amazing amount of dedication and passion. I guess I want to touch on the diet part because you mentioned it. But what is for you like the right kind of food to eat to get you ready?
I think, me personally, a big part of making sure I feel my best before a cast is making sure that I avoid too much pasta and dairy. For myself, I feel like that really slows me down, makes me feel bloated, and it's definitely hard to put out good vocal energy and just feel good in general if I feel like bogged down and sluggish. So I try to stick to just like a clean protein and vegetables for lunch and dinner before a cast. I feel like that makes me feel a lot cleaner heading into an event.
Man, you must have done sports or something. That's pretty spot on.
Yeah, I played a lot of sports growing up, and just over time, paying attention to what I'm eating and how I feel afterwards, I've sort of developed a couple of just sort of facts that I know about myself in terms of what meals make me feel heavy afterwards, what makes me feel light and ready to go. So I'm able to sort of apply that in situations like this.
Did you wrestle by chance?
No wrestling, a lot of baseball, a lot of basketball. Uh, Lately, it's been mostly softball, but over time, I've played a few different sports.
Okay, all right. And the reason I asked about the wrestling is usually people that do those kind of sports can feel when they're a little heavier, but
Yeah, for
baseball.
sure.
What position did you play?
I pitched mostly, and I played a lot of outfield.
Wow. So you got the analysis part down as a pitcher.
Yeah.
Right on. I played third base myself.
Oh, fantastic.
All right. So let's do something. Let's change it up a little bit, like that.
Sure. Sounds good.
That was a pitching joke. What would you tell a new caster?
The main thing I would tell a new caster is to try to set up OBS or XSplit or whatever have you. Get it out of the way ahead of time so you're not thinking about it on your first cast. Like, go in there and set up your scenes, make sure your levels are good, that your audio's coming through clean, just so it's not on your mind when you're trying to cast. Having as few extra things to think about during is very helpful. And when you're first starting out, I would say just focus on relaying what you're seeing in front of you. If you don't quite have the analysis ready, if you don't know the teams backwards and forwards, just calling the play and seeing what's in front of you, adding your own sort of insights here and there, that's what you really want to be focusing on for cast number one.
What's the hardest thing for a new caster?
Honestly, the hardest thing for me at the start was to keep up with the observing as well as the casting, because trying to make sure that I'm looking at the correct play, that I'm catching everything on the field, that I'm not, swinging the screen around too fast and making all the viewers sick. That was something that it took me a little bit of time to develop. It's still something I'm trying to practice, but trying to, keep an eye on everything, make sure that I'm not tripping over my words, but I'm also observing in a smooth way is a skill I'm still working on developing.
Well, that's all the questions I have, and yeah, I want to say again, thank you, and I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for talking to me today.